Hello Internet, and welcome to my live reaction for Eden Zero, chapter 214. When we last left our heroes, we ended the entire conflict surrounding the dragons, as Elsie, despite the sort of red herring Mashima continued to pull about her potential allegiance, took control of the Mobius system to shut down every dragon, basically ending the last remaining threat on Lendard, with the very big exception of Ziggy himself. But meanwhile, Hermit continues to get closer to working out who the true enemy is. I'm starting to suspect it is Aetherion itself, given this particular snippet of conversation Hermit pulls up. That's my running theory, that Aetherion itself is corrupt somehow. But then we come back to Shiki and Ziggy, where Shiki fails in his mercy killing of Ziggy, allowing the Yami Ziggy to reemerge. And Yami Ziggy then seemingly kills Pino. I suspect the good Ziggy played a hand in that and ended up just using Wormhole on her as opposed to crushing her. But Shiki believes her to be dead, causing him to enter into a new overdrive that has some suspicious similarities to Shora's overdrive, which is a fascinating choice, but that's where we leave off. So with that said, let's dive right on into the new chapter, opening straight in with the color prologue. Going way back to Ziggy training Shiki. "You're showing a real aptitude for this, Shiki, my boy." And the very young Shiki snaps at him, "That's rich, coming from the guy who just beat the snot out of me. Don't be rude. You said you wanted to train." Let's do it again. This time I will land a punch on you, Grandpa." Chapter 214, As One. Which I have no idea what that could be about. But our cover here is a full, color spread of most of the main players of the crew of Edens. We're missing Connor and Couchpo, who I do count as a main member of the crew, despite how little she's gotten to do this arc. But they're all in like a rock band scenario, except Homura with her flute, and Hermit and Clean as cheerleaders, which aren't really rock bandy, but okay. It's a nice little cover though. Mashima really showing his chops. But we pick up right where we left off in the present with Shiki landing that intense blow on Ziggy, as he just roars at him, knocks Ziggy back. But Ziggy picks himself back up and taunts, "Is that the best you can do, Shiki?" And the two of them slam their fists at each other. We see the sort of gravity shockwave as these two big balls of gravity clash, destroying the tower they're at. The land about them goes flying as they both ready another hit. And I think this is just the ramifications of the battle, as everything crumbles due to the intense gravity as they both throw themselves at each other over and over again. We see Shiki lands a kick on Ziggy's head, sending him flying down, because they're both flying at this point, in case I did not make that clear. And Shiki uses the rubble as a launch pad to shoot himself down towards Ziggy, and lands a punch. And then I think gravities himself up above Ziggy and lands on some more falling rubble. As the tower just I love the whole concept of battling through the collapsing tower, especially with their gravity powers. It's just really, really cool to see. But at a lull in the action, Ziggy taunts, "If that's all you've got, you'll never destroy me." And with his own ether gear, he throws a bunch of loose pieces of rubble towards Ziggy, or towards Shiki, and Shiki holds out his hand, and all of them slam into the ground. And the interesting thing here is that last chapter kind of presented this overdrive, with its sort of Shora, and also its Ziggy influences in the sort of horns in Shiki's head, as a kind of, I guess it could best be compared to in early Shippuden, when Naruto would dip into Four Tails, or in the fight with Pain when he's fully tapping into the Nine Tails and pure rage. At its core, it's a bad thing. It's helping him stop the bad guy, but it's not really, we're not supposed to see it as positive. Whereas here, at least to this point, there hasn't really been a lot of talking from Shiki. But it's not, just the way it's drawn is not really, it doesn't feel like it's meant to inspire horror as much as it is a fist-pumping good fight. And it is a good fight, don't get me wrong. And I might have just been misinterpreting some of the intention in the last chapter. I don't know. Anyway, Ziggy lunges at Shiki, and Shiki just glares at him, full of rage. So not full on, like, we can recognize that as, going back to the point I was just making, we can see that as a change enough in Shiki's demeanor to be like, he's turned in from a wide enough scale, perhaps a bad way. Either way, Ziggy readies a punch, and Shiki blocks it. And it turns into a flashback to, like, that training match from earlier, when the good Ziggy did the same punch that Shiki blocked. Good. Next will be a right kick. And we see the present Ziggy does that kick, and Shiki knows to duck it, just as he did in the past. Get ready for a left cross. And Shiki, like baby Shiki, uses his ether gear to get out of the way. I flew. No, you didn't fly. You fell toward the sky. That's how you use gravity. And we see in the present, so as I'm seeing that flashback, actually, I want to talk about this now that I just saw those next lines. In that little flashback right there, the fact that it was like the same fight from when they were kids made me think that maybe there was like a piece of the good Ziggy still in control, as with my prior Pino theory. And now we see what I'm assuming are the present Ziggy's thoughts. They actually might still be the past Ziggy's thoughts overlaid in the present battle. Alright, now it's time to show me what you can really do. Hit me with everything you got. And we see that actually might be, it's a little bit hard to tell if that's meant to be present or past Ziggy, in that if that's Shiki reflecting on that long ago sparring session, or if this is Ziggy wanting to be beaten by Shiki. Perhaps? I don't know. It's a possibility. If this is all like meant to be a test for the true enemy, who is definitely Aetherion, as I've commented before. But anyway, Shiki gets this ball of gravity in his hand and expands for Black Sky, his final move. And then Shiki calls to Ziggy, "Did you think I wouldn't figure it out? That I'd fall for the same trick twice?" Oh, yep, I was right. It is still our Ziggy. You sent me off into space. I'm making everyone on Granbell pretend they'd gone berserk. Yeah, it's the exact same thing. And now you're acting like you've been taken over again. And through his tears, we see his like ether gear starts to sort of fade, it looks like the black markings fade. I'm on to you, Grandpa. Which means, of course, Pino is definitely alive. But Ziggy questions, "Then are you going to stop?" "No, I'm not." "Good. Don't let me lose control again." Oh, so it was also to show Shiki that, like, that danger will forever remain. As Shiki screams and throws his Black Sky onto Ziggy, as Ziggy just comments, "Destroy me." And the Black Sky explodes, encasing Ziggy and putting him to rest once and for all. And the dust clears, Shiki is back in his normal state, and Ziggy is gone. And yeah, like I said, it was Wormhole. The fact that there was no debris, showing that she was just teleported and not gravitied. Because this is Pino, who falls through the wormhole. And she notes, "I went through a wormhole, which means Master Ziggy." And she sees Shiki standing amidst the dust. "Master!" And Shiki tells her, "I'm glad you're okay, Pino." And Pino looks at him as Shiki, stares over the devastation. "This time it really is goodbye. Grandpa's really gone. I could never tell him before, so I hope he got the message. Thank you for raising me. Thank you for everything, Grandpa." As his the final thoughts there. As Shiki sort of thinks through Ziggy's life, jumping through time, becoming a robot, then going back in time and raising me. Oh no, I think this is Ziggy's some part of his consciousness that's still there. It's been a strange and unusual fate, but the Shiki standing here now exists outside of the Wheel of Time. Another version of myself. One that never became Ziggy. And that means even if I die, I won't disappear. And we see this, like, flashback of the old Ziggy, like, ruffling Shiki's hair. We will become one. Shiki and Ziggy. And Shiki just weeps. And I'll leave it all to my other self. I trust you to guide the path of this universe. And choose the path for the Eden Zero. And we have a particular shot of the Sakura cosmos. As Shiki finishes the chapter through his tears. I will, Grandpa. I promise. And that's where we leave off. Okay. So, I'm still sort of putting my thoughts together for this chapter, because I think it's the same thing I've sort of been saying for a lot of this arc, for the end of Crow, the end of Act Noella, and now here at the end of Ziggy. They all feel like they work, right? They all feel like they work, but it also feels a little quick. Like, I don't know. Like, as, you know, I don't think this quite scratches the peak of, like, Gray Silver, which is the sort of itch that this whole conflict here is scratching. Like, Gray Silver is my favorite Mashima moment of all time, and this fight, while it's definitely, like, worth being in the same conversation as it doesn't reach it. It doesn't reach that peak. But also, and I think part of it is that, like, Ziggy as main villain, how do I put it? So, I will say, while I collect that thought, I'll go on something else. I was a little worried once it became clear that this Ziggy was still the good Ziggy. Like, early in the fight, when in, like, the mirror parts of the fight in this chapter, when I started to suspect it, I was like, my initial fear is, are they trying to say that the entire thing with Ziggy was, like, just him pretending? You know, really going on that silver thing. Because that would make everything really weird, because Ziggy killed a lot of innocent people, and I wouldn't really be on board with that. And I'm glad that, like, Ziggy made it clear, no, this is not what's going on there. When Shiki mentions you've been taken over again, definitively stating that he was taken over, this has not been a giant act this whole time. You know, showing to Shiki the point of this whole fight, showing Shiki what would happen if Shiki does not take him down. And, like, I think going back to what I was trying to get at earlier, before I focus on that tangent, I think my issue is, as a moment for Shiki, it works really well. This sort of moment of, you know, he has to face the fact that whatever goodness still lives in Ziggy, whatever goodness could still come out of Ziggy, as Elsie noted, as we've seen in this whole little return of the good Ziggy, there is still always that threat. You know, at any moment he could be taken over again and kill Pino, which is why Ziggy had to do that whole Pino act, and why he had to, like, take her out with a wormhole. That's why that was also important. And so for Shiki, that works really well. But, like, for Ziggy as a villain, I think losing Ziggy, given that he's been even with the whole true enemy thing, Ziggy has been sort of the series' big bad, as much as we've known him to, or we've thought of him as the big bad, for a good 100+ chapters. You know, Eden's 1 started around chapter 100, I think only was like 6 chapters long, so it's been over 100 chapters since Ziggy's return, and that's over half the series. He has been the threat, the overarching enemy. And so there's a part of me that's not big on the fact that he's taken out while he's literally not there. Like, it's not quite the same thing as him getting off-screened, and the fact that all of that can be blamed on the true enemy, on most likely Aetherion, if my theory is right, it dulls that a little bit, but not fully. It doesn't fully get rid of my central problem. That, like, Ziggy as a villain was cool, was intimidating, and while I wanted to lose in the end, I wish he was, like, still here when he lost, if that makes sense. I don't know. My thoughts on the whole is that, like, I think this works better than, say, Act Noella, which felt like it brought up a lot of possibilities as it was cutting those possibilities out. And admittedly, that's made somewhat better by the thought that, like, those possibilities were just Irene again, with, like, a couple differences. And you know, it's better than supposing Cure is actually dead now. It solves that problem. Or it's not as bad as like introducing Cure and then instantly killing him off, which I'm not really on board with. Also, I'm curious what this means for the rest of everything else going on Lendard, because like, I think the Planet Eater, like, the fact that the series has been building up Planet Eater for the better part of a year, and especially with the Mother Room reveal, adding these sorts of emotional stakes to it, and then with Ziggy gone, the Planet Eater plan is just sort of unnecessary. And so I'm once again curious what Machinima is doing with that. It just speaks to this larger theme in the Kaide War of like, it's like, objectively I know this arc is not like too short. It's the longest arc in the series so far. But also it feels like in the past 10 or so chapters, it's just kind of been wrapping everything up in ways that, while they feel satisfying, it's a weird little contradiction there. It feels satisfying. You know, both Aknoela's defeat, Crow's defeat, Crow and Cure's defeat, Ziggy's defeat, they're all emotionally satisfying moments. You know, the long battle against Crow ending with Holy taking justice for her sister and against this symbol of darkness throughout the entire cosmos. Aknoela a little bit, you know, showing the pain that Elsie is willing to wreak on herself for the sake of peace. And here with Shiki forcing himself to take down his grandfather once and for all, even with that good side to his grandfather still being active. These are all great moments. They're great beats, and yet they all feel just ever so slightly off. Ever so slightly like, I don't know. I'm really trying to put words to my problem, because I don't think it's just, that's going quickly, because I don't think that's the issue. And it's not that, like, they don't feel weighty, because they all do. They all feel like there's a big weight to Aknoela, especially, not so much as Elsie killed her, but, like, in the aftermath with, like, the breakdown, the I don't want to fight anymore bit, from last week. Shiki killing Ziggy, Holy finally killing Cure and Crow. They all feel good, but there's just something about them all that feels, I don't know, rushed is like the closest I'm getting to it, but it doesn't feel rushed. It feels something like a cousin to rushed, but not actually rushed. I don't know. Anyway, I do think this chapter works. I think this chapter hits hard. I think that moment of Shiki standing there, thanking Ziggy, and also, like, feeling that final, like, hearing that final message of Ziggy as, I guess, their time-displaced souls become one. These are moments that are so strong. And they're great to read. They're really good. And I don't know, it's a good chapter. I'm not trying to, like, downplay it. But there is just that weird feeling of like, pacing, I guess. But I'm not quite sure what the problem with the pacing is. I don't know. It's good. It's still good. I really don't want to downplay how strong this climax is. Because it is really strong. I don't think it quite reaches as great as, like, the end of the Shura fight was. Because the entire ending to the Aoi War was so damn good. But, like, it's much like with Grey Silver, like, can be talked about in the same conversation with it. It's not quite like the peaks Machima's ever gone, but it's still nears there. For as weird as the pacing in this whole last 10 chapters or so feels, it still works really damn well. And I'm, of course, always excited to see where Machima's going to go with all this, because it just hits is the thing. It still always fucking hits. But yeah, all in all, it's a chapter I have complicated feelings with. I don't normally spend half the video talking about my like, retrospective thoughts. But this chapter has so much to dig into, both for, like, the pacing of the whole arc and the chapter itself. It's real good. It's a real emotional high point. And I can't wait to see what comes next. So with that said, I'm going to leave this video off here. Hope you all enjoyed the chapter and the video itself. If you did, feel free to drop me a like or subscribe, or, you know, do whatever makes it happy, you know? And as always, your life is your own, okay? Bye!